welcome to my channel. We are in one of the hottest summer months right now. I hope you're having a nice summer. All of my plants are disbudded and resting, and today's topic will be a video on demand. A while ago, a subscriber asked me to make a feature about the zippering condition in African violets. As I was beginning to grow my collection a few years ago, I learned from expert growers that zippering was a sort of mutation manifesting in the abnormal growth of African violet leaves and crown centers, and so I used to get rid of the plants that zippered in the past. This time I managed to save up 3 plants for you of 3 different African violet varieties that have zippering symptoms, and some are more obvious than others, to make a show and tell episode about zippering. And I'll tell you all I learned as an intermediate grower about this condition in African violets. Starting today are 3 semi-miniature varieties: Cajun's Little Ooh La La, a semi-mini with variegated, plain shaped foliage hybridized by Belinda Thibodeaux. Another semi-miniature with Clackamus shaped foliage, and it's a very famous variety with this type of foliage. And the type of foliage is, of course, a topic of its own merit. The video on the types and shapes of African violet leaves is still in the works. So this hybrid is called Maas Angela, and it was hybridized by Maas. And a semi-miniature trailer, a Lithuanian hybrid by Būtienė, a favorite of many, called Lituanika. I actually have a video review of this particular hybrid on my channel. If you'd like, check it out. And I will include full descriptions of these varieties in the description box under this video if you'd like to check them out later. Today we'll talk about the terms used to describe the zippering condition in African violets and other plants, the symptoms, the causes, how they grow and bloom, and the propagation options for zippered plants. Can we propagate them or should we not propagate them? What is zippering? Zippering is a term used to describe a plant tissue mutation, also known as fasciation, not to be confused with fascination, or it's also known as cresting. The term fasciation, and sometimes it's pronounced as fasciation, I'm still learning how to pronounce it. It comes from Latin fascia, or a band in Latin. In addition to botany, it is also used in anatomy to describe membranous bodily structures. A related term, fascis, in Latin, or plural fasces, and originally it means bundle, was later used as a political and military symbol in ancient Rome. What are the zippering symptoms? In healthy growth, the growing tip is normally concentrated around a single point. Growth habit in African violets, for example, is such that the center of the crown normally emits 1 leaf at a time, and the new leaves grow in the groups of 3. Here on the left you see Jolly Deer. It's a miniature by Hortense Pittman, and here you see that the center of the crown, this is where the new leaves appear, is a single point, meaning that the smallest, the youngest leaf is at the very center. And let me show it to you closer so you can see. And then they just come out in the groups of 3, one after another, but still from a single growth point. When the zippering mutation occurs, the growing point becomes elongated perpendicularly to the direction of growth, producing crested or contorted tissue. This is called fasciation. In other plants, it may occur not only in the stems and leaves, but also in roots, fruit, and flowers. So the first visible symptom that you can see right away is the crested growth in the crown center. And here's a good example of it in Cajun's little Ooh La La. You will see that these two varieties, the center looks very different. Here we see one center of growth, and here we see multiple centers of growth, and they're all lined up kind of in a line, which looks like a zipper. And that's why it's called zippering. Because by appearance, it is visually similar with a zip fastener in clothing. Another symptom that sometimes is present in the plants and sometimes it's not, it's the leaf that's zippered or split into two growing points. Here, for example, on Maas Angela, you will see this particular leaf. It's split into two growing points and basically just split in the middle, and each point is growing separately. And here in Lituanika, you will see that in addition to splitting the crown in some of the suckers or some of the individual crowns, and as we know, trailers grow in multiple crowns, so some of them look okay with a single growth point, and others look kind of like it wants to split the crown here into two crowns. Let me show you here closer. So this is one growth center, and here right next to it is another growth center right there. In addition to this, it also has the leaves that kind of look asymmetrical, and this is one of them. And then here I saw another leaf here. Looks a little off, like it doesn't look perfectly symmetrical like this one, for example. And this one here, that's the youngest leaf. So you can see like this variety is mutating, but of course Lituanika is a very special hybrid. It has its own history, and recently I found a very interesting article about the hybridizer, speaking about also the history of this particular hybrid. So it's known to be splitting its crowns sometimes, or growing multiple crowns right next to each other. So this is something I just realized that it's gonna do it no matter where I get this particular hybrid. I wanted to get this variety from a different source to see if maybe it has better growing habits, but based on the history, the article that I read, it looks like it's gonna grow multiple or split crowns no matter what, based on its history. But it's a beautiful hybrid. It's totally worth keeping, in my opinion. There are several factors that are known to cause zippering, including genetic mutation, hormonal imbalances, bacterial and viral infections, fungi, mite or insect infestation, and chemical treatments. The way these three plants developed was a little different, and it was telling me that the causes might be different, but they can still might be the same. It's just an observation. So with Maas Angela, for example, I noticed it right away. I propagated it from a leaf that I got from an eBay vendor, and when the leaf produced babies, each of those babies, or almost all of them, had a split crown appearance from the start. And so I picked the one that looked the best and kind of looked like it did have a single growth point. It looked like this, and I just kept this plant and tossed all others. And then eventually it still started splitting the crown into multiple crowns, and this is not a trailer. So you will see here how it has multiple growth centers. One is here, another one here, and then here. and then this one here. So this one probably was called by genetic mutation, and of course later on, just recently, it had started splitting the individual leaves. So definitely this is a zippering symptom, and two main zippering symptoms, and most likely it was caused by genetic mutation. Both Cajun's Little Ooh La La and Lituanika were growing very healthy at first, and then later on started showing zippering symptoms. Here I will show you the pictures and the video of these two hybrids when they had healthy appearance. And then now, of course, you will see that this one is fully zippered, and I'm contemplating if I should propagate one of the leaves that are further away from the center of the crown, or maybe just remove this variety from my collection. And this one just showing the symptoms that Lituanika is known for, like the distorted leaves and also the split crown centers here just in one place, whereas the other crown centers look fine. Like this one looks good to me. And because these just developed symptoms not right away as they were young plants, but later on, I'm thinking maybe it's caused by the insecticides that I've been using as prevention for my African violet collection. I use Bonide systemic houseplant insect control granules in my potting mix, and I also sometimes spray with the insecticidal soaps to make sure that the plants don't have any insects, because the Bonide granules only last for 8 weeks, and I don't have enough time to replant all the plants in my collection every 8 weeks. So they do definitely get some insecticide treatments as they grow, and the zippering in these two plants may be simply caused by the introduction of chemicals to their care routine. They grow together with all of my other African violets, so they don't receive any special African violet care that is different from other plants. And other those visually unappealing symptoms, if I may say, they just look totally fine. Of course, this one is a little bit unkept because I kind of was setting it aside to show and deciding if I even want to continue growing this particular one. And these ones were recently sprayed with insecticidal soaps, so there might be some signs on the leaves here, but they just receive the same care as all others. And as you can see, they all bloom. So the zippered plants that have these mutations in their growth can bloom as well. Here you will see Cajun's Little Ooh La La. This one is in constant bloom. It's a gorgeous variety when it grows healthy. And then this one sets some buds off, and so does Lituanika here. So they can bloom even if they have this zippering mutation in them. And lastly, can the zippered plants be propagated, and should we keep the zippered plants in our collections? That is, of course, a matter of personal preference, but keep in mind that propagating the zippered plants that were genetically mutated is likely to produce the same mutation in the new offspring, and Maas Angela here is a good example. The leaf that I received was a very healthy looking leaf, but when it produced babies, almost all of them had the zippering mutation visible. And so this particular plant, if I were to propagate a leaf that even is not a zippered leaf, but a healthy leaf, it may be very likely to produce the plants, the new offspring that will also carry on this mutation gene in it. If, on the other hand, the fasciation was caused by bacteria, fungi, mite, or insect infestations, and if these infestations, unbeknownst to you, are ongoing, they can spread through propagation onto the new offspring as well. This is why it's recommended normally not to use zippered plants for propagation and dispose of zippered plants. And of course, knowing the history of a particular hybrid helps as well. For example, knowing the history of Lituanika, here that it's known to split its crowns. But if you like this hybrid, you can of course keep it and propagate it. That's your personal choice. So for me, Lituanika is a keeper.